Hey everyone, it's me, Bo. I'm back. Film scene investigation. Hope you're all doing very well. Today, I have a new review for you. I know you guys like me to review these erotic dramas, so I've got another one here for you today. I'm going to be taking a look at the 2003 movie, The Dreamers. Just before we get into this review, guys, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. All the support is greatly appreciated. So, The Dreamers from 2003 was a movie directed by the filmmaker Bernardo Bertolucci and was based on the novel entitled The Holy Innocents by the author Gilbert Adair. The author was also involved with the production, the screenplay to be exact. I believe they wrote the initial first draft, but over time, Bertolucci made several changes. As for the plot, the story was set in the 1960s and focused on the American exchange student, a guy called Matthew, who was played by the actor Michael Pitt. Now, he had arrived in Paris to study the French language, but quickly became enamored with French cinema. He frequently went to the movie theater to catch whatever was showing, and this is how he eventually met the siblings Theo and Isabel, played by actors Eva Green and Louis Garrel. These were two twins that lived with their parents in this very extravagant apartment in Paris. They too were fans of cinema and quickly bonded with Matthew. All three of them became very close very quickly. They would sit around, drink, smoke, and discuss cinema, even testing their knowledge on one another. Matthew would soon start living with Isabel and Theo while their parents were out of town. He enjoyed their company so much, it seemed like the, ideal situation. But as time went on, Matthew started to realize that there were some strange things going on between the siblings. He first noticed how touchy-feely they were towards one another, always hugging and kissing each other. And initially, Matthew didn't think anything of it. But one night, after going to the bathroom, he ended up looking in on Theo and Isabel and found them naked and sleeping on the bed with each other. Obviously, Matthew was shocked. I mean, rightly so. These guys were brother and sister, right? What are they doing? Yeah, I mean, he kind of freaked out, but given he didn't know or have a full grasp, full understanding of what the situation was between the two, Matthew just decided to keep quiet. I mean, I can understand that to a certain extent. I think if it was for me in that situation, I probably would have confronted the two and been like, what the hell, and made a quick exit. But Matthew kept quiet. He didn't fully understand what was going on, but he soon found himself getting dragged into these weird sexual encounters. What started out as playful, innocent fun soon turned into this sordid sex game amongst all three of them. Now, after watching Dreamers, it was pretty clear that this movie was a love letter to the old cinema of the past. We saw several clips that were inserted into the film, footage of Charlie Chaplin, Fred Astaire, and several others. And it was almost like a tribute of sorts, with the three main characters, Theo, Matthew, and Isabel. They didn't just love cinema, they inhabited it, into their lives, as they frequently recited lines of dialogue from several films and then even reenacted scenes. The director, Bernardo Bertolucci, obviously infused his love of cinema into the characters that we saw on screen. And, if you're like me, a film buff, you're into films, then I think you would likely as well appreciate Bertolucci's efforts. As for the siblings, Isabel and Theo, it was obvious that they were a pair of pompous, upper-class kids that, that lived in their own bubble. They had this forced identity, fancying themselves as these liberal, high art students who actually supported communism. The more I think about it, it was like they used this fake persona to basically shield themselves from the outside world. They had created this fantasy, and cinema was a big part of that. It was this bohemian, liberal kind of, like a fantasy world. And once they made friends with Matthew and, they bonded, they then invited Matthew into their world. Now, there's no denying that that's what they were doing. They were shielding themselves from the truth. But do you ask yourself, what truth? What were they trying to hide? And it became pretty clear to me that what they were hiding was their incestuous relationship. It was like Isabel and Theo, so they just didn't want to face reality. The reality that they were having this sickening, sordid relationship, and they knew it was wrong. And it's not like they were proud about it. It's not like they wanted to, tell their parents. No, they hid it from their parents because they knew it was depraved. Yet their closeness, the bond they had, their, almost like codependency on one another, it was too strong to break. Now, what was very interesting for me was that after watching The Dreamers, I kind of had this self-reflective moment where I realized that what Theo and Isabel were doing, living vicariously through cinema, that's kind of what I'm doing. Now, of course, I'm doing it for completely different reasons than those guys. Those guys were trying to hide an incestuous relationship. For me personally, I'm just so sick of the cultural stagnation that we seem to be living in right now. The corruption, the politics, the wars, just everything right now in the 21st century, especially from COVID onwards. It's just, it's very bleak. And of course, there's always hope in the future and things will change. But as of right now, entertainment alone is just, And so that's one of the reasons why I do this channel, to celebrate the cinema of the past, but also, just to, watching old films and stuff like that. I need that. I need that escapism. And in a way, for different reasons, but it's the same as Theo and Isabel. I'm doing exactly what those guys are doing. Thematically, The Dreamers explored police brutality through the various clashes that we saw happening on the streets of Paris. There can be no denying that this movie painted a pretty bleak picture of French authority, making them out to be violent and heavy-handed. But what I found interesting was how Bertolucci and the film's cinematographer, Fabio Cincetti, were able to make those chaotic scenes feel and look so compelling and poetic. From the firebombs to the damaged cars on the street, Bertolucci was able to show beauty even in a very ugly situation. And that leads me on nicely to talking about the overall look of this film. As I said, The Dreamers was set in the 1960s, and clearly the filmmakers went out their way to create a authentic period piece. I was impressed with the attention to detail that I saw on screen. And yeah, with all the clothing, and the fashion, the cars, yeah, it felt very authentic. It can't be denied. And I think as well, because of the efforts, the lengths that the filmmakers went to create that vibe and atmosphere, it did make it very easy for myself to kind of get immersed into the story. And yeah, that's one thing about Bertolucci's movies. I mean, they are controversial, but even thinking back to Last Tango in Paris, a movie that I've reviewed for this channel, that movie, yes, very graphic at times and, a lot of nudity, but Paris, I mean, it looked so authentic and so beautiful. And yeah, clearly Bertolucci has an eye for beauty on screen. I also should quickly mention the film's soundtrack that featured some classic artists like Jimi Hendrix, The Doors, and Bob Dylan. Having all of that music inserted into the film, it certainly helped create that artsy, bohemian student lifestyle that Bertolucci was going for. So yeah, it worked very well. Great selection of songs. Now, when it comes to the performances, all three main actors, I thought, had some wonderful chemistry. They had this natural rapport with one another that really added a lot of realism to the story. With a film like this, where your three main characters, are central, it is pivotal to make sure you cast the right actors for the right roles. And yeah, the casting agent did a fantastic job here. I thought all three, Eva Green, Michael Pitt, and Louis Garrel, they really kind of bounced off one another. And yeah, great job. Individually, I thought actor Michael Pitt, playing the American exchange student Matthew, a guy who was quite naive and generally made some bad decisions and trusted the wrong people. There were times when I thought Michael Pitt's performance did come off a little pretentious, but then I had to kind of remind myself that that's exactly what the intention was, to have this pretentious character. So yeah, he did a great job. And Michael Pitt's an actor that I've thought should have become a bigger star than he is. I've loved him in the movie Bully. I've reviewed that before on this channel. Also, Boardwalk Empire, the first two seasons, him playing, I believe it was Jimmy. Yeah, a great character. And yeah, he really showed that he was quite versatile. Actor Louis Garrel did a solid job playing the manipulative and destructive man Theo, the brother of Isabel, a very flawed individual. This guy fancied himself as an intellectual, but ultimately he had very little life experience. So yeah, I kind of found that quite ironic. Ultimately, I wasn't really a fan of the Theo character, and that's no criticism on Louis Garrel. He did a solid job, but I just thought the character didn't really have any kind of redeeming qualities about him, especially later on when he forced Matthew to sleep with his sister. I mean, what an absolute weirdo. when it comes to Eva Green, she was the standout in this movie. It was very clear as soon as she appeared on screen that she was the most kind of charismatic, and yeah, she was the star. She did a great job, playing a woman who was dangerously seductive and someone that, unless you like drama, someone that you probably wouldn't want to hook up with. Now, there were tons of nude scenes in this movie. Not surprising, it is a Bertolucci film after all. But a lot of that was around Eva Green, full frontal nudity. And yeah, I mean, when you really break it down and if you've watched enough behind the scenes, what goes on set, yeah, it must have been pretty hard to kind of do those scenes fully naked with tons of, people, camera crews and all that kind of stuff hanging about. I understand that Eva Green's agent at the time insisted that she shouldn't take this movie due to all the nudity. But, I mean, ultimately it worked out for Eva because this was a great film. She was the star, as I said. She really stood out from both Michael Pitt and Luz Garral. And yeah, I mean, she did a great job. And so, dislikes for The Dreamers from 2003. My biggest dislike for the film would have to be the sex scenes that, for me, unfortunately, just lingered on for way too long. Now, going into this film, I fully expected to see nudity. Yeah, I mean, that was no surprise. And I haven't actually got an issue with the level of nudity and all that kind of stuff. My issue really is with the kind of lingering and the actual duration of these sex scenes. While it was an interesting story, don't get me wrong, simulating sex and masturbation, all that stuff kind of just dragged on, and I just think it could have been trimmed back. It didn't really need to go there. I mean, more for me, but I came here for the drama, for the story, not for the nudity. And if that was the case, I'd just, go watch porn. Some of those scenes, they just went on for minutes at a time, to the point where I was like, can we get to the next scene? We get it. We understand. Now let's move on. And yeah, just the duration of that stuff, it was just excessive. I can only assume that the filmmakers decided to, linger and all that stuff to, titillate the audience. I really can't think of another reason why they would just linger on that stuff for so long. I will rewatch this movie again at some point, but when I do, I'll be sure to use the skip button. Another dislike I had, and this was a minor one, was that I thought the movie kind of ended pretty abruptly. Now, in the last 10 minutes of the film, we ended up seeing the parents of Isabel and Theo making a surprise return from their travels, only to find their children and Matthew naked and what looked like to be the aftermath of some threesome. The parents were, of course, shocked and didn't really know how to react. And for me, it was kind of, while it was tragic, it was also kind of funny at the same time. The guys were fast asleep. They had no idea that their secret was out. And yeah, I mean, just when you thought that they might wake up and there would be this big confrontation, the parents just ended up leaving. I was kind of confused. I was expecting someone to wake up, or maybe they would wake their own children up and, confront them about what the hell was going on. But they didn't. And quickly a riot broke out outside the apartment. The guys went downstairs, and that was pretty much the end of the film. Now, I said this was a minor spoiler. It didn't ruin it for me, but I did think that there was more story to tell, and the fact that the filmmakers kind of teased this confrontation that didn't actually happen. Yeah, I was a little bit let down by that. And so, ratings for The Dreamers from 2003. I'm going to be rating this movie a 5.9 out of 10. The Dreamers was a surreal, erotic drama from the legendary Bernardo Bertolucci that explored some of the kind of worst taboos in society, with the incestuous relationship going on, or the secrets and lies. This definitely was a very provocative film that had some interesting aspects to it, but not a film that I think holds mass appeal. It's clear that Bertolucci wanted to make this thoughtful and compelling film that explored sexuality and politics and cinema. But I do think the story did get sidetracked with some of the absurd sexual moments. I do think that the director leaned too heavily into all of the sexuality and all the kind of explicit content. And ultimately that stuff, as I said, it did drag on and did start to lose my interest. If you've seen The Dreamers, then please let me know your thoughts and memories in the comment section below. For all you guys out there who haven't seen this one yet, it is a recommendation from me. I think if you're a fan of cinema, and given if you're watching this and you're a subscriber to my channel, then absolutely, you'll like this movie for sure. Definitely fans of Eva Green. If you haven't checked this one out yet, definitely do, because I haven't seen all of her films, but I would say this would be a career highlight for sure. I mean, she really committed to the role. And also Michael Pitt. I'm a big fan of that guy. I think that he should have had a bigger career. But yeah, he's definitely very good in this film too. And well, that's all from me today, guys. I do hope you've enjoyed this review of The Dreamers from 2003. I'll be back next week, of course, with yet another cult movie review. If you haven't already, guys, please do consider subscribing. I do really appreciate all the support. And of course, take care.